What is good, Tesla family? It's Ray J back with another video, and in this one I want to break down what's going on with Tesla stock and the overall market, what's happening with Amazon and Apple's earnings, how this may affect their share prices and also for the whole markets, and what's going on with the news and data affecting Tesla for tomorrow. That's going to be very important. But before I do anything like this, before I get into any more details, let me just mention a couple of things. I'm firstly not a financial planner, so make sure you take none of this as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out the Webull link, which is down below and in the description. If you sign up for Webull, the link down below, and deposit any amount of money into the account, you are guaranteed up to 12 free stocks. The offer ends in just 2 weeks, so check it out before they run out. With that out of the way, let's get on with the video. All right, so Tesla's up about 0.28% right now during the after hours, trying to hold up, and Tesla's outperforming the market because of some bullish news that came out. Now, this news was just for today specifically, and overall, as we're seeing some stocks trying to hold up, the market is still in a very, very strange looking state right now because we have two giants right now. We have Apple basically dropping, and we have Amazon pumping, and the market is very, very flat, kind of in the middle, and it's going to be determining the direction going into tomorrow. But first, let's talk about the earnings. Why is the market doing this? How are earnings looking? So one of the biggest surprises, according to earnings whispers, would be Amazon. There's an 85.3% surprise on this from their rating. That's very, very high for Amazon because they did very, very well. Apple ended up doing well on EPS and revenue, but when you break down their revenue specifically, right, not just like the overall revenue, but just like the sectors in it, they do have some concerning things that came out, and that's part of why it ended up selling off. Other companies out there, such as Airbnb, are trying to hold up. Other ones are just doing relatively well. But the question is, how will the market end up moving tomorrow? And what's going on with the two big ones? What's going on with our two favorite giants, Apple and Amazon? So for Amazon, it's up about 7 to 8% as of right now, holding up very nicely and beating on almost everything. And they had relatively strong guidance, which I will break down in a couple of minutes. Same thing for Apple. I will break that down in a few, but they're actually dropping. They're down over 2% as of right now, even though they beat on EPS and revenue. I'm going to explain exactly why they're dropping though. Then we have a couple of others like Booking Holdings. They actually are up quite nicely. A couple of others are up too, like DraftKings. But Coinbase is very flat, and Redfin is also down 10%. So quite mixed. And overall, it is quite a mixed earnings report when it comes to the reactions that came out for them. So very, very mixed stuff overall as well, especially for like Amazon, pumping and Apple coming down. Why is Amazon pumping the way it is? Because they had some relatively strong earnings. You can see them right over here. Net sales were 134 billion versus the 131 billion being the expectation. So they beat on net sales. Their EPS was another beat as well. Their web services was a beat. Operating margins, operating income, all beats. And finally, this is the biggest thing in my opinion, the Q3 net sales outlook was basically between 138 to 143 billion, beating the estimation of 138 billion. So very good for them. They're basically expecting them to basically meet their expectations for the net sales for the next quarter or beat it in its entirety with 143 billion. You also have to remember that their net sales for this quarter were 134 billion. So we're expecting some good stuff for Amazon for Q3, and that's part of why Amazon is pumping the way it is. Strong guidance is what many investors look out for, and that is bullish news for Amazon, as Amazon's currently up about like 8% the last time I checked. Let me just double check. It's currently up actually it's up like 10% now. So it's just continuing to pump, forming this bullish wedge right over here and breaking below resistance at this 140 area. Investors are pouring into Amazon and this thing is getting very close to 145. Once again, looking very, very bullish. But what about Apple? Why is Apple down right now let's just see, it's down almost 3% right now. Why is Apple sinking the way it is? There are many reasons for why that happened. So if we look at their numbers specifically, they beat on EPS, which is great. Their revenue ended up being a beat despite being down 1% year over year. Their iPhone revenue was a miss. They missed on iPhone revenue, down 2% year over year, which was some negative news. The Mac revenue was also, they beat on that just barely, but it's down 7% year over year. The iPad revenue is also a miss. It's down 20% year over year, which is not a good sign. And other products revenue was technically down about 2%. It's up 2% year over year, but it's down compared to the estimate. So they basically missed on the expectation, but it still is up year over year. Services revenue was a beat, so is their gross margins. Overall, not bad in my opinion, not that horrible. But one thing that did concern investors is that Apple's talking about how the current macroeconomic factors are continuing to affect them, and they're starting to see smartphone sales declines approaching the next quarters moving forward. They mentioned that in the US specifically, they could see an acceleration for iPhone in some services, but smartphones in general are just on this downtrend. But despite that, Mac and iPad revenues are expected to see double digit declines going into the next quarter and also for year over year. So, once again, we're expecting declines for Macs and iPads, unfortunately, not good news whatsoever for them. And they're starting to see real effects of the rate hikes, right? The rate hikes going up are causing issues for them, not to mention what's happening in China. And the list of issues just continues to go on. I mean, it's just not what we want to see. And because of these talks about, potential weakness for some of their products, because of the fact that revenue could get impacted because of it, we did see Apple start to sell off. It wasn't a crazy sell off. It's not down like 10% or anything that insane, but it is dropping so far almost 3% at the time I'm recording this. Now, here's the thing about the markets, okay? If you look at SPY right now, right? SPY tends to track the S&P 500, and you will notice that it's very flat. It's only up about 0.07%, very, very flat. The question is, why is this happening? Well, it's stuck in this tug of war. We basically have the very, very big tech stocks out there like Amazon. They're basically pumping. Some stocks are pumping very nicely. Then we have a big tech stock like Apple coming out and they're just straight up dropping. So they're kind of stuck in the middle. It's like a tug of war right now, and we haven't really seen a big reaction either way. Amazon's pumping more, right? Even though Apple's not dropping as much. But the thing is, Apple has a bigger weight than Amazon for the whole market and also for like the triple Q. So that's worth noting. It's just so flat right now. We just have to wait until tomorrow comes out. And this headline is now coming out and saying that stock futures are a bit changed, or they're not even changed much. Investors are now waiting for the key jobs data for tomorrow. So that's going to be the bigger thing the market's going to be looking at now. And then we will see a reaction tomorrow to see which one of these earnings will the market prioritize. Will the market focus more on Amazon's projected growth, or will the market talk more about some declines in Apple? Some projections for declines, which is going to affect sentiment more. That is yet to be determined, and we will find out tomorrow, unfortunately. However, I do want to mention that there's another piece of data worth mentioning. We have the unemployment rate coming out tomorrow, 1 hour before the market opens. We're expecting 3.6%. If it's way too high, this is going to cause some declines because the market will be talking about a recession and things like that. If it's way too low, this would not be too good for the economy because if you think about it, the Fed is going to be incentivized to continue to raise rates. So the reason why it would be bad for the economy is because the Fed will continue to raise rates, which will lead to more pain for like the more like medium to longer term when the rate hike effects finally start. But for the direct effect of the economy, right, we want low unemployment. You can't always forget that. So big jobs numbers are going to be coming out for tomorrow before the market opens. And besides that, there's not really anything else coming out. Now, as far as Tesla goes, we had some decent volume, 97 million for the day. And we had this bullish news that came out as Tesla was basically discussing more plans with India. This was basically with the commerce minister again in Delhi, India. That's very, very bullish news for Tesla. That's part of why Tesla was holding up quite nicely. But the question is, will this continue into tomorrow? Tesla is developing a bullish structure, but just to be safe, we have to watch for the reactions. Now, Morgan Stanley is saying Tesla is going to perform equally with the markets. To add on to this, the price price ratio is trying to hold up at these high levels, which shows that Tesla's trying to hold up a lot better than before. It's not like dropping, this price price ratio is not dropping so hard like it was at one point when Tesla was underperforming. Now Tesla's trying to outperform the market. Tesla's trying to hold up, is what that's suggesting. Historically, Tesla tends to be green about 49% of the time on Fridays, so it's almost 50-50. And then we tend to do a lot better during the second and obviously the fourth and fifth hours. I talk about that almost every day. I would like to look at any like adjustments made to this because this can actually help traders on the daily basis when watching Tesla. Now, moving forward, the short interest on Tesla has been continuing to decline. We're seeing more shorts covering, closing positions, and this is actually helping Tesla hold up. We saw even more closing their positions today after this bullish news came out involving India, and we're not really seeing Tesla being shorted as it has been in the past. The shorts are not as interested in it as before, and this is just based off the legal data we have. It's just suggesting that we're not seeing as much craziness in terms of the short interest. Now, could it be because of some things they know? Could it be because of other factors? Could it be because they're kind kind of afraid of shorting Tesla after seeing how much it ran. There's so many different factors. Who knows exactly what the reasoning is, but we will find out later on if they make any changes. So, anyways, now let's talk about the market. Let's talk about Tesla and the technicals. I just want to mention that as far as Tesla goes, from a technical standpoint, this is looking more bullish as it was making higher highs and higher lows. It's also up in the after hours, and it looks like it wants to hold above 260. But we need confirmation first. I'm not actually super bullish on Tesla in a way where I'm just going to solely look at technicals, just look at technicals, and then make my determination based off that. What I want to say is this: the market's going to react somewhere tomorrow to the unemployment numbers, and then also based off what it perceives to be the bigger excuse me, sorry guys, what it perceives to be the bigger piece of news involving earnings. Will the market end up dropping because of Apple, or will the market end up just continuing to hold up and push because of Amazon? I'm not 100% sure about that just yet because it depends on so many factors, and we'll have to wait and see how the market does for tomorrow. But for now, I am anticipating that from a technical standpoint, Tesla does look more bullish, so the odds do favor the bulls a bit more. The bulls want to see it break 260, then get to 262.5. Break that, then 265 is a real possibility. But the bears want to see Tesla reject off this, form this like head and shoulders like panda. There's a possibility that this could play out, and then it comes all the way back down to like 255 or so for a Friday sell-off. Now, what seems more probable? Well, it has been making higher highs and higher lows, and it is fighting 260. It looks like it really wants to break it. So it is looking a little bit more bullish just based off technicals. I'm not talking about like, the market's unemployment data for tomorrow or really factoring in everything. I can't really do that because we have to wait for data for tomorrow, of course. But for now, it looks more strong. It looks like the odds favor us is going to try to hover around the 260s and try to break out at the time I'm recording this video. Now for SPY, okay, this thing is very flat. It's up about 0.12%. This is going to be tricky to predict. I don't know which way it's going to go because it depends on, like I said before, the unemployment data, and also, which direction the market chooses to move based off of what it considers to be more significant. The bulls want to see it basically hold above 450 and then break its way up to about 451. And if that breaks, 452 is not out of the question. The bears want to see the market end up rejecting off 449 and come all the way back down to 448.5. And if that fails us, 447 becomes a real possibility for SPY, especially 447.5. What looks more likely? Well, it's very flat right now. It's really hard to determine which one is looking more probable. I mean, you could argue there's a possible like inverse head and shoulders here that has been developing, and it's going to just try pushing up afterwards. I'm not too sure about that. I wouldn't necessarily count on that. It really depends on the reaction for tomorrow and the jobs numbers moving forward. So I'm still in the middle with this, and I honestly can't predict what's going to happen until I see the pre-market. So we have to wait for that, unfortunately, for SPY. Now for the IWM, it's basically the same thing. Bulls want to see it break above 195 and push up for 195.64, then break down and get to about 196.5. The bears want to see it break below the current support around this 194 area and come all the way down to 193. What looks more probable? For now, it's showing a little bit of weakness as we're starting to see the small caps slow down a little bit compared to tech. So there's a chance it could come down a little lower. It looks a little bit more probable, but just to be safe, we'll see what the reaction is. For Nio, I want to call this one out because Nio is still showing some aftershocks from the result from its strong deliveries. Nio is continuing to see lots of support from China, and it's still holding up nicely as more buyers are continuing to step in. Nio has not really dropped down like the market because many investors are excited about it after the very strong deliveries, and guidance has been relatively strong for them for the second half of this year. So that's good news for them. They're trying to hold up. I just wanted to call that out. 16 is not out of the question unless it breaks below like 15.8 and just comes down. Then we could be watching for a retest of this like 15.24 area. But for now, it's kind of in the middle. Looks a little bit more bullish from a technical standpoint, but I'm always open-minded to be safe. Now, for Apple, it looks more bearish. It's continuing to break to the downside. Apple tends to not make the most volatile moves, especially as of recent. It has a tendency of being more like kind of stuck in range bound. And today, in the after hours, Apple is down over 2%, testing 185. This stock is going to bring some downwards pressure for the market. Apple's going to try to slow the markets down for sure, but the question is, could this be offset by Amazon? Amazon's up almost 10%. Amazon is also a giant. There's a possibility that Amazon could try to offset this. That's why I'm not as confident, not as sure about this, because the market is just flat right now. It's not really reacting as much for the time being. I think right now that Amazon's up like 10%, this is going to be a little bit more impactful. Even though Amazon's not as big, it is up pretty big. So this could be a little bit more impactful, but we'll have to wait and see tomorrow as Amazon is trying to get closer to 145. Now, to add on to this, I just want to mention that we just have to see tomorrow how it goes with all the jobs numbers coming out. The triple Q is being more impacted by Amazon. It's actually a little bit green in the after hours. So that's a good sign. If we're bullish, we're going to be watching the triple Q try to get above 375. If that breaks 376.6 is a possibility, then 378. If we're bearish, we're going to be watching this thing break below 373. If that fails us, it could come down all the way to about 371.7. What do I think is more probable? Well, I'm in the middle, to be honest with everyone. Dead in the middle, but I'm leaning a tiny bit more in the bulls' favor because so far the market's trying to hold up. The unemployment numbers haven't been too bad, so there's a good chance it may try to hold up. And Amazon may have a bigger effect on this because of how much it's pumping. I think it's a little bit more likely, but just to be safe, we want to be open-minded. For Nvidia, I'm also in the middle for this as it's very much just flat. We just look at it. We're going to be watching 444 as support. If that fails us, then 440 is possible. And 436 and 433. For resistance, watch 450, 452.5, and 455, and then potentially 460. What do I think is more likely? I think it's a little bit more probable that Nvidia is going to get tight and try to break above 450 and try to hold it. I'm leaning a little bit more in that direction, but just to be safe, I always want to watch the pre-market and see the numbers just for safety. But for now, it's looking a little bit better, a little bit more bullish, holding above this higher level compared to yesterday. It does seem to be favoring the bulls a bit more. But just to be safe, we're going to be watching for the numbers for tomorrow and see the reaction from the markets. This is what Nvidia is looking like for the time being. You can see it actually formed a bullish divergence technically. It is due for a small bounce, so it is trying to bounce right now, and we will see how it moves moving forward. Just to be patient. Now, for Microsoft, if you're bullish on Microsoft, you want to see this thing basically try to hold above the current level. And you can't forget that if it breaks above 330, that's going to be our test for the bulls. The bears want to see it break below 325. It looks like it's going to try to bounce right now on the 4-hour time frame. It's going to try to push up for about 330. Looks a little bit more probable, but just to be safe, we'll see what happens for tomorrow. AMD is a little bit down in the after hours. We will see how this one moves too. It looks like it could get a retest of this imbalance around this like 120 area in the future, but we first have to break above 115 to get there. So we have to get above 115. If it does break that, then that is going to become a real possibility. But for now, it looks like it's going to try to retest 115 and trade sideways. If it were to break down, you're going to be watching this imbalance as well. This 109 imbalance, that's the more bearish case than 107. I think it's going to most likely just trade sideways and try to hold up a bit. I don't really think it's going to tank insanely hard unless some bad news comes out and unless something bad happens with the market's reaction. Uh, Last but not least, even though the 10-year is up, I'm not going to be too worried about the 10-year and the dollar until we see what happens tomorrow morning. The 10-year pumping was a bearish signal for the markets. However, it doesn't matter going into tomorrow because tomorrow is a new day and we could see a new reaction to all these different earnings. For Meta, the bulls want to see it break 315. If that happens, we're going to be watching this thing get above like 318. The bears want to see it get below the 50 EMA and come down to 309 and 307. What looks more likely? Well, it looks like it's getting kind of tight and it could be forming another accumulation right over here. So we might see a bounce on it. We might see this thing approach this like 315 area, maybe a little bit higher by tomorrow. But just to be safe, watch which direction it breaks in. All right, so now SPY is actually a little bit more green in the after hours. You can see Amazon's having a bigger effect. So I'm starting to think Amazon might have a bigger effect, but just to be safe, we always want to be open-minded and wait for tomorrow. Let's see how the market looks in the pre-market and let's see how the data looks for tomorrow when it comes to unemployment. Now, right off the bat, I can tell you that from a technical standpoint, Tesla looks a little bit more bullish. It looks like it wants to break 260 now. It looks like it got a nice reversal after the India news that came out. We got a bullish catalyst, but I'm not super fixated on that notion. I'm not super fixated on Tesla breaking out tomorrow because I'm always going to be open-minded and wait for the data and all these different things just to be safe, okay? So I want to make that clear. There's both a bull and bear case. Each of them are very possible, but I'm a little bit more bullish. I'm just leaning a little bit more in that direction. I'm not like insanely convicted in that direction though. Just leaning a little bit more there. And with that said, please have a great day, everyone. Remain calm, cool, and collected, and we will see what happens to the market with all the data dropping and the reaction to all these big tech earnings. All right, so have a good day, everyone. Tesla on the market to the moon as the long term is still incredibly bright, and peace out.